The forest is supposed to be the quietest place on Earth, and it is, until it isn't. Fire lookouts live where they work, alone, in a glass box above the trees, with a crackling radio and nothing else. We're trained to spot smoke, to read the forest, to trust our instincts. But sometimes, in the silence between radio checks, we notice something that isn't on any map, something that isn't smoke and isn't flame. Sometimes, the forest watches back. These are 3 stories from lookouts who saw it, and every one of them learned the same thing. The most dangerous thing in the woods was never the fire. My name is Leo, and my first season as a lookout was on Azure Peak. It was a remote post, a hike-in spot. That meant an 8-mile hike up winding switchbacks with a 60-pound pack just to get to my front door. The tower itself was an old steel skeleton with a 14 by 14 foot cab on top. Basically a glass box sitting at 9,000 feet. The ranger who trained me called it the loneliest job in the world, but he said it with a smile. For the first 2 weeks, he couldn't have been more wrong. It was the best job in the world. The solitude was almost a physical thing, a comfortable weight that settled on my shoulders. I fell into the rhythm of the mountain easily. I'd wake before dawn to a deep, bruised purple sky and get the coffee going. Then a full 360 scan with the binoculars, checking the familiar ridges spread below me like a rumpled green blanket. For the first month, the only real drama was a couple of false alarms. The kind of quiet where you can hear the whisk of a hawk's wings a mile away. The change was subtle. So subtle, I didn't even log it at first. It started about 3 weeks in. I was doing my standard horizon scan. To the west, about 7 miles out, was a long, dark ridge called the Sawtooth. A jagged line of granite and ancient gnarled pines. Nothing lives up there. But that afternoon, I saw movement. It wasn't an animal. I'd spent enough time watching elk and the occasional bear to know how they move. This was different. Through my binoculars, I could just make out 2 shapes moving along the crest of the ridge. They were tall and impossibly thin, and they moved with a strange, jerky rhythm. It wasn't hiking, and it wasn't climbing. It was like stumbling, but with purpose. They'd lurch forward a few feet, then stop, perfectly still, for a minute or 2 before lurching forward again. I checked my map. Sawtooth Ridge was designated wilderness. No trails, no access points for miles. I kept the binoculars on them, my coffee going cold. They looked like lines drawn with a charcoal pencil, stark against the granite. I keyed my radio. Azure Peak to dispatch. Over. Go for dispatch, Leo. Over. Hey, Sarah. Quick question. Do we have any permitted backcountry users on the Sawtooth Ridge? Over. A pause. Negative, Azure. That's a restricted watershed area. No permits issued for that sector. Why? You got a smoke? Over. I hesitated, looking through the binoculars again. The figures were gone. The ridge was empty. Negative, dispatch. Just a trick of the light, I guess. Azure clear. I didn't want to be the rookie who cried wolf over some weird shadows, but it left me with a feeling of unease I couldn't shake. The silence in the tower, which used to be a comfort, now felt heavy, like it was listening. A week later, it happened again. This time, they were closer. On a slope about 4 miles north. Now there were 3 of them. They moved the same way. That lurching, unnatural walk, then long periods of unnerving stillness. But this time, they were moving down the slope, toward my valley. I grabbed the Osborne and lined up the crosshairs, my hands slick with sweat. They were still just dark shapes, but now I could see they had no discernible heads, just long, slender bodies with limbs that seemed to bend at odd angles. They moved through dense brush without making a sound, without disturbing a single branch, as if the forest was just letting them pass through. I held my breath and read the azimuth. 352 degrees. Then I did something that wasn't in the manual. I grabbed my personal camera, the one with the telephoto lens. I braced it against the window and zoomed in as far as it would go. The image in my viewfinder was grainy, distorted by heat haze. But it was clear enough. They weren't people. Their bodies were too long, their limbs too spindly. They looked less like living things and more like scorched trees that had somehow come to life. And they were all facing my direction, not just generally, as if they were staring right at my window, right at me. My blood ran cold. That feeling of being a guardian evaporated instantly. It was replaced by a new, terrifying certainty. I was the one being watched. I stumbled back from the window, my heart hammering. I thought about the radio. What would I even say? Dispatch. I see 3 spooky stick figures 4 miles out, and I think they're looking at me. They'd pull me for a psych eval. The isolation, they'd say. It gets to people. So I said nothing. I just watched. I didn't use the binoculars for the rest of the day. I didn't want to see them any closer. That night, sleep was impossible. The wind, once a lullaby, now sounded like whispers. Every creak of the old tower was them, coming for me. The next morning I was exhausted. I swept past the 352 mark quickly, afraid of what I'd see, but my eyes were drawn back. The hillside was empty. The relief was so powerful it made me dizzy. Then I looked lower, at the tree line. About a mile from my tower, where the dense pine forest began, a single figure stood, motionless, a tall, black sliver against the dark green trees. It was closer than ever before. My radio crackled to life. Azure Peak, this is dispatch, requesting morning weather report, over. It took me 3 tries to get the words out. I read the numbers, my eyes locked on the figure at the tree line. It didn't move. Roger that, Azure, Sarah said, but her voice sounded wrong, distorted. All good up there, Leo? Sarah? Dispatch? I can barely read you. Repeat your last. Over. Only static answered. A thick, roaring static that filled the small cab, and in the center of that noise, I thought I could hear something. A faint, rhythmic sound, a slow, dragging cadence. Lurch. Stop. Lurch. Stop. I dropped the radio. I looked back to the tree line. The figure was gone, but another one had appeared, to the east, and another to the west. They were spaced out, forming a loose perimeter around the base of my mountain. They weren't coming closer. They were just watching, waiting, cutting me off. I spent the next 48 hours in a state of pure terror. I didn't sleep. I just moved from window to window, tracking them, sometimes 3, sometimes 5. They'd stand for hours, then melt back into the trees, only for another to appear in a different spot. The wilderness that had been my sanctuary was now my cage. The radio was nothing but that horrifying static. I tried calling every hour, just static, and that sound buried inside it. On the 3rd day, the supply packer, Gus, was due. He was my only hope. I spotted him around noon, a tiny speck with his 2 mules moving up the trail. I've never felt such relief. I started shouting and waving from the catwalk, but as he got closer, he stopped. He looked up at my tower, then around at the forest. Even from a distance, he looked spooked. He quickly unloaded my supplies right there on the trail, still a mile away from the tower, then turned and practically ran back down the mountain. dragging the animals behind him. I couldn't understand why, until I saw it. One of the figures was standing on the trail, just 100 yards behind where Gus had just been. It hadn't been there a moment before. It was just there, still, silent, watching Gus flee. Then, it slowly turned its featureless top half toward my tower. That's when I broke. I grabbed my pack, scrambled down the 65 steps of that metal staircase, and I ran. I ran for 8 miles, and I never looked back. They told me I'd had a panic attack, brought on by extreme anxiety and paranoia from the isolation, classic cabin fever. They said the radio malfunctioned because of a solar flare, and that Gus turned back because he saw a storm coming that I, in my terrified state, had missed. They had a neat, logical explanation for everything, but they never could explain the notes in my logbook, the azimuth readings, or the single, grainy photo on my camera of 3 scorched figures on a hill, all staring at my tower. They took the camera as part of their investigation. I never saw it again. I still have nightmares about the silence and the static that broke it. I dream of being in that glass box, watching the trees, and I dream of the figures that stand among them, lurching, stopping, and watching me back. My call sign was Juniper 7. I spent 12 summers in the same tower on Echo Ridge. After more than a decade, I thought I'd seen and heard everything the forest had to offer. I knew the forest's voice. And that's how I knew when something started talking back. It began subtly. It was a dry, quiet June, and I started hearing odd animal calls at night. I'm used to coyotes and owls. This was different. One night, I heard what sounded like a cougar scream. It was close enough to make the hair on my arms stand up. The sound was raw, full of agony. I grabbed a flashlight and shone it from the catwalk, but the beam was just swallowed by the darkness. A cougar fight, I told myself. I logged it and tried to forget it. 2 nights later, it happened again. This time, it was a buck, a full-throated roar, but it was wrong. Too perfect. It sounded like a recording of a buck, played at high volume from just beyond the clearing. A moment later, the same cougar scream as before, then total silence. Animals don't just broadcast their greatest hits and go quiet. This felt like a performance. The next day, I was on the radio with dispatch. As I signed off, Juniper 7, clear, a strange sound came over the frequency. It was a perfect echo of my sign-off, but it wasn't my voice. It was higher, thinner. The mimicry escalated. A few days later, I was chopping firewood at the base of the tower. I heard a sharp thwack from the woods, maybe 50 yards away. It was the sound of an axe splitting wood. I stopped. Thwack. It was a perfect echo of my own rhythm. I stood dead still. A minute passed. I slowly, deliberately, tapped the flat of my axe against a log. Clank, clank, clank. From the woods, the answer came. Clank, clank, clank. I dropped the axe and backed toward the stairs. My heart was pounding. This wasn't an echo. It was intelligent. Something was out there, listening, and it was learning. That night, I locked the trapdoor for the first time in 12 years. Around midnight, the performance began. The cougar scream, the buck's roar, but now there were new sounds. The squeak of my tower's ladder rungs, the exact clang of my cast iron skillet on the stove, the sound of my own dry, nervous cough. It was playing my life back to me. Sleep was out of the question. Every sound I made, I imagined being recorded, cataloged. The isolation I used to cherish became a curse. I was alone with this acoustic parasite. There's one part of what happened next that I've never told anyone, not my supervisor. Not the report I never finished. For a long time I told myself I'd take it to the grave. I'm starting to think I was wrong to keep it to myself, because what it did next, I need someone else to know. The next morning, I called my supervisor. I tried to explain. "It's mimicking me," I said, my voice trembling. "Take a couple of days off, Sarah," he said gently. "The pressure gets to everyone." I refused. Leaving felt like surrendering. This was my mountain. The turning point came a week later. A storm rolled in. Thunder rattled the windows. Then a call came over the radio. A man's voice, laced with panic. "Mayday! Mayday! This is Hiker Alpha 2. My leg is broken. I'm about 2 miles north of the Echo Ridge lookout. I can see the tower." I snatched the handset. "This is Juniper 7. I copy, Hiker Alpha 2. Can you give me more details on your location?" "Thank God," he sobbed. "I fell. Please, hurry." His voice was cut off by static. My training kicked in. "Hiker Alpha 2, pop a flare if you have one. Over." The voice came back, weaker now. "No flares, so cold." Then he started coughing. A deep, wet, racking cough. A sound I knew all too well. It was my grandfather's cough. He died of emphysema 5 years ago. I'd spent his last month alive listening to that exact horrible sound. I dropped the handset. My blood turned to ice. I forced myself to pick it up. "Who is this?" I whispered. The radio crackled. The coughing stopped. A new voice came through the speaker. A little girl, crying. "Mommy, I'm lost. Can you come find me? I'm scared of the dark." It was my voice. From a tape my parents had of me when I was 4. A recording I hadn't heard in 30 years. I threw the handset across the room. I was hyperventilating. This thing wasn't just mimicking sounds. It was in my head. It was using my memories against me. The hiker, the cough, the little girl. It was all a lure, trying to get me to leave the tower. I curled into a ball in the corner, hands over my ears. But the sounds weren't coming from the radio anymore. They were coming from outside, from the base of the tower. The little girl crying for her mommy. My grandfather's dying cough. A phantom chorus of my deepest griefs and fears. I stayed like that until the sun came up. The voices were gone. The silence was absolute. So I didn't call my supervisor. I just packed a bag. I left my logbook open to a single entry. Juniper 7 is compromised. I walked down those stairs for the last time. The forest looked perfectly normal, peaceful even, but I knew it was a lie. It was a hunting ground. I got in my truck and drove away without looking back. They say the guy who replaced me is doing just fine. He loves the peace and quiet. But sometimes, when I'm on the phone and there's a little bit of an echo on the line, I freeze. And I wonder if it's just feedback, or if it's the forest, calling to see if I'll still answer. My name is Frank. For 20 years I was a fire lookout in the Klamath National Forest. I've seen lightning start a dozen fires in an hour, and I've watched a blow-up turn 10,000 acres to ash. I've seen things that would make your skin crawl. But nothing prepared me for my last season at Dyer's Flat. Dyer's Flat wasn't a peak lookout. It was an 80-foot tower in a wide, grassy plain, surrounded by old-growth timber. An easy post. A place for old-timers like me. That summer was one of the driest on record. The whole forest was a tinderbox. The first strange thing happened during a supply drop. A ranger named Ben was unloading my groceries when he got a weird look on his face. "Frank," he said, looking out toward the northern edge of the flat. "You got a visitor?" I followed his gaze. Standing at the edge of the trees, maybe 400 yards away, was a man. Just standing there watching us. He was wearing what looked like a heavy dark wool coat, the kind you'd see in an old photograph. It was 95 degrees out. "Never seen him before," I said, grabbing my binoculars. "A hiker in a winter coat?" Ben muttered. He yelled, "Hey, you all right over there?" The man didn't respond. I brought the binoculars up. He was gaunt, with waxy, pale skin. His eyes were lost in shadow. He wasn't looking at Ben. He was looking straight up at the cab of my tower. At me. He came back 3 days later. Same spot. Same time. Same heavy coat. This time, I was alone. He just stood there for nearly an hour, staring up at the tower. He never moved a muscle. This became his routine. Every couple of days he'd appear, watch for an hour or two, then vanish. He never came closer. He just watched. The psychological pressure started to build. The forest didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like his territory. A week later, he did something else. As I watched, he lifted a hand and beckoned to me. A slow, deliberate curl of his fingers. "Come down." I froze. This was new. An escalation. I grabbed my radio, but I hesitated. What if he was delirious from heat stroke? My duty was to help. Instead of calling dispatch, I used the local frequency. "This is Dyer's flat. Unidentified male at the north tree line. If you can hear me, are you in need of assistance? Over." The man dropped his hand. He stared. I repeated the call. No response. Then he did something that chilled me to the bone. He raised both hands to his mouth and mimed shouting, but no sound came out. He was mocking me. Then he smiled, a wide, unnatural grin that didn't reach his eyes. His teeth looked wrong, too many of them, too sharp. Then he turned and walked back into the woods. That's when the real fear began. This was a predator, and he was playing with me. The next time he appeared, he was in the middle of the flat, halfway between the forest and my tower, 200 yards. He had cut the distance in half. I didn't hesitate. "Dyer's flat to dispatch. Over. I have a code 3 situation. Aggressive, unidentified male on site. He is approaching the tower. Request immediate law enforcement. Over. Roger that, Dyers. Help is on the way. ETA 1 hour. Are you able to secure your position? Over. 1 hour. An eternity." I locked the trap door and moved the heavy firefinder table against it. I looked out the window. The man was walking toward the tower, a slow, steady, deliberate pace. He stopped directly at the base, in the blind spot right below me. I was trapped, 80 feet in the air. Then, a sound, a soft, rhythmic tapping from the stairs. Tap, tap, tap. He was climbing. I scrambled away from the trap door. The tapping grew louder, closer. It was unhurried. He was climbing an 80-foot staircase in a wool winter coat, in 95-degree heat, and he wasn't even out of breath. The tapping stopped just below the trap door. Silence. My ears were ringing. A soft scratching sound, then a voice, a dry, rasping whisper from the other side of the door. "Frank." My throat closed up. "Let me in, Frank." The whisper continued. "I've been watching you. I see you make your coffee. I see you read your books. I see you sleeping." The voice chuckled, a dry, rattling sound. "It's time to come down now, Frank. The forest is tired of being watched." He knew my name. The doorknob began to jiggle. He pushed, and the chair I'd wedged under the knob scraped against the floor. "Come on, Frank," the voice crooned. "It's a long way down. You don't want to fall, do you?" Suddenly, my radio exploded with sound. "Frank, this is Ranger 3-1. I'm at the base of the service road. What's your status?" It was Ben. The pressure on the door stopped. I heard a faint hiss from the other side, like air leaking from a tire. I crawled to my radio. "Ben, he's on the tower. He's right outside the door." I heard a faint shuffle outside, then nothing. A lifetime later, heavy boots clattered up the stairs. Ben burst in, gun drawn. The catwalk was empty. We both looked down. The flat was empty. The man was gone. The deputies found nothing. No footprints but mine and Ben's. No camp. No wool coat. I was done. I packed my things that afternoon. My 20-year career ended not with a fire, but with a whisper through a door. They put a rookie in the tower the next week. On his third day, he radioed in, said there was a man in a heavy winter coat standing at the tree line, watching him. He thought it was some kind of prank. They told him to just ignore it. I still dream about that voice. The forest is tired of being watched. It makes me wonder about all those lonely towers. We think we're the ones looking out, but what if we have it all wrong? What if the towers aren't for us to look out of? What if they're just cages, putting us on display for whatever is looking in? The deep woods hold secrets that defy easy explanation, and the men and women standing watch are often the only ones who ever witness them. So I'll leave you with this. If you've ever spent a night somewhere remote, a cabin, a campsite, a job far from anyone, and heard something answer back, I want to know what it said to you, not for me. For the next person reading this in the dark, trying to convince themselves it was just the wind, because I've told you mine, and there are 3 more seasons I've never written down, the ones I don't have words for yet. When I find them, I'll tell you the rest. Until then, the next time you're in the quiet of the forest, listen closely. You might not be as alone as you think.